Hey everyone, welcome to a Zoom episode of In Range, but we're doing this remotely right now because we're going to be doing something cooler real soon. We're here to talk about Juneteenth and the awesome Juneteenth commemorative event. I'm going to use that word at the Buffalo Soldier Museum in Houston. And I've got my friends here, Kale and Jason, who are both from the museum and awesome guys. And what I wanted to do is have a fairly brief conversation about, first of all, let's tell the audience what is Juneteenth? Because a lot of people still don't know. And then what's happening at the museum to commemorate this very important historical event?
So when people refer to Juneteenth, they're referring to essentially when the Union forces were able to arrive in large numbers in Texas and be able to enforce, which was referred to as General Order Number 3, which was essentially the Emancipation Proclamation. And so pretty much it was celebrating the fact that on June 19th, 1865, General Granger and basically a core of Union troops were able to not only arrive in Texas, but actually able to occupy parts of Houston and Galveston and enforce the Emancipation Proclamation because Union troops were kind of in and out of Texas since 1862, but it wasn't until 1865, really in the aftermath of the Civil War, when they were actually able to arrive and enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. And some would say that it was marked the ending of slavery in the South. So
Yeah, essentially, so the Emancipation Proclamation freed everyone in Union occupied territory as they occupied it. And when the war was over, parts of Texas were still like, there's no Union soldiers here, so how about not us? And so when the Union showed up, that became no longer optional, and they had to even give up that horrible cause in Texas. And that is Juneteenth. So that is, I don't think that we can argue that it actually ended slavery, but it ended it as the in the guise that it was being used for before the Civil War, right? We have other things to talk about that go on after that. But so the Buffalo Soldier Museum is going to commemorate that specific event, which is the end of that form of legal slavery in the United States. So what are you all doing? I know you've got a lot going on. I'm going to show up. I can't wait to see it. But I know you've got reenactors, you've got presenters. Like, give the audience a vibe about what this is about.
so I'll try to summarize as much as I can. So it's going to be a 3 day event, which is the first day is going to encompass an exhibition that is going to explain not only the history and significance of Juneteenth, but connecting the history of Juneteenth to the United States colored troops who arrived in Texas who basically arrived in Texas and stuff like that. The other aspect of it too is that in addition to the exhibition, we're also going to have a living history encampment, which is going to dive more into the significant roles the United States colored troops played in Texas. Because one of the central themes of us doing this whole exhibition, this whole event in the first place, is to try to demystify Juneteenth. There's a lot of like when Juneteenth became a federal holiday, even before Juneteenth became a federal holiday, there's been a lot of misconceptions about who did what. Like, so one of the primary things that we would hear about is that, oh, well, black troops arrived in Texas to specifically end slavery. And from Jason and I's research, as well as talking to some other historians, while there is some grains of truth to it, it doesn't really tell the full story of why these people were brought here in the first place. And in doing so and doing that research, we found out that one, not only when these men and even the woman that was connected to them arrived here, like it's not just a story about Emancipation Proclamation, but it's a story about the enforcement of the Monroe Doctrine, how the U.S. is kind of trying to enforce its presence on the stage, but then also a story about the United States colored troops and their interactions with people that were on the borderlands and how those stories intertwine with not only the black soldiers that come here, but even the role that the people on the borderlands played in kind of the abolition of slavery and stuff like that, and well, resisting against slavery. And so the whole point of these events, is to try to demystify and basically clarify some of the history that people, well, one, educate people about Juneteenth, but then two, add some broader context to show that, well, one, Juneteenth is an important holiday, but this is how it connects to other communities. This is how it connects to other historical subjects in terms of Black military history and everything else. But more importantly, this is how it still impacts us today.
I was just
Jason,
going
is
to
there
say
anything you want to
how it
say?
resonates still now, like in 2025, right?
And I
Could you
think that's
imagine
one of
being a
the
colored trooper marching into Texas in 1865? What that must have felt like, considering what was happening only 4 years earlier? Like that must have been quite an experience. Jason, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the point we want to hammer in is kind of the impacts of today, you know. So often you hear that expression, you know, freedom has a price, right? And so we want to dive in to showcase what that price is, right? The consequences and the kind of and the I guess the impacts of the Emancipation Proclamation is still being felt today, and its legacy aspect of that, because the Emancipation Proclamation is kind of that first stepping stone on that kind of civil rights kind of movement that we all here often talk about when it comes to defining what it means to be a person, right? With this exhibition in particular, we want to focus on certain themes like freedom, liberation, citizenship. You know, these are certain elements that not everyone always gets to have reflect upon, you know, certain key themes and what it means to be American, essentially, because at the end of the day, many of us still follow these several themes of freedom, liberty, citizenship. And this is kind of that story to showcase that it's not just a white situation, but also marginalized groups and people of color also express those same values and freedoms that often associate with what America is associated with when trying to promote that American exceptionalism, so to speak. And so this is our way of showcasing that, you know, there is a greater picture, and Juneteenth ties into that sort of spirit of independence, which so often, you know, Juneteenth is for some communities, it is that Independence Day that they do celebrate. So that's why we're trying to tie it in and allow other groups to experience Juneteenth not only as a festive, but to learn about that historical context so that they know why we celebrate Juneteenth.
I love that because I think so much. I think so often when people talk about history or American history, it's always somehow relegated to only one portion of it. But really, it is a shared experience right across the board,
Hmm?
from from a colored trooper who is now free technically from that form of slavery to Chinese experience in the West to going up into World War II, where Japanese internment camps. Like all this is a
Hmm?
shared experience that is broader in spectrum than just one event. But Juneteenth is the beginning of so many of those steps forward. And I think that's why
Hmm?
that's so worthwhile. So, first of all, let's tell the audience if they want to come, where do they need to go? And what does it cost? And what are they probably going to see there? So like let's tell them like you need to if you can come, you should come to the Buffalo Soldier Museum for the Juneteenth events in Houston for sure. But when should they be there and what are they going to see when they come?
So on June 19th, that's the opening of the exhibition, and that will be hosted at Texas Southern University, a local historically Black college and university that's not far from the museum. That event would be from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I don't think I can verify confirm the times, but that's where we're going to have the exhibition opening, as well as a panel that's going to be discussing kind of the historical significance of Juneteenth and how it still impacts us today. When it comes to the encampment and the events surrounding the encampment, that would be on June 20th and the 21st from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the museum location. So, museum location would be 3816 Caroline Street in downtown Houston, right across from Houston Community College. In terms of the cost of the event so far, there is no cost to any. There's no cost to the event. The event is free and open to the public. I know with the exhibition opening, I think they're suggesting that people basically have the wish to give, they can donate. But overall, the events are supposed to be free and accessible to the public, so that way people can come and enjoy the history as well as kind of interact and have fellowship.
So what I hear here is if you are coming to celebrate this step forward for civil and human rights, that's a reason to be there. If you're a history nerd, like frankly the three of us are too, like you can come there and you can see these reenactors, right? You're going to have living history reenactments. You said an encampment. So we have like full on like reenactments going on. Is that fair?
Yes, so basically the guys we're bringing in some guys from organization called the Living History Co., which is going to be a group of USCT reenactors that are from all over the country, but they mostly come from the Northeast. They're mostly going to be focusing their portrayal primarily on the USCT, but they're also going to include the roles that women play, and particularly in terms of the medical field, as well as in the free communities following the end of the Civil War.
Mhm.
And so for the people that are into like the military history aspect, you have the USCT guys out there kind of going through explaining, hey, what's the role of a USCT soldier in Texas, as well as a USCT soldier and their experiences prior to Texas. They're also going to be doing musket drills, which they're going to actually include like blank demonstrations. But also, I know in the case of Jason is more of a fan of the medical component. So we're going to actually have like one of the reenactors. Her whole specialty is basically about kind of exploring the medical field and understanding how the black nurses who work, or the black women who worked with the medical units would use kind of like how they would use like certain plants in nature to help when it came to curing certain things that the soldiers would deal with, as well as kind of showing how they would have to do amputations and stuff like that in the field. So in addition to the USCT component, there's also going to be other supporting components that's gonna tie into it to kind of give a more fleshed out picture of how the soldiers and the people around them would have to live in that time and their experiences basically both in Texas as well as coming to and being in Texas after. So,
On that note,
And you,
Jason, when you said when we talk about medical and artifacts as well, like I think people have grand misunderstandings of the state of medical technology that was actually being used in the Civil War. It's actually better in many ways than we thought, in some ways worse, right? But like, so what's coming to the table in terms of artifacts and some of that content that people could see if they come?
there's a lot. Like I said, Kel mentioned my interest is in the medical field because I really like to focus on that aspect because as an Asian, a lot of our parents want to be doctors, but unfortunately, I am no doctor. But doesn't mean I don't study the history of medicine, right? And so through that aspect, that the demonstration that she's going to bring in, she's going to talk about the importance of sanitary, the importance of clean tools, and then the different types of tools from bone saws to herbs to help fight gangrene and to fight other conditions like dysentery as well, because disease was one of the main killers of a lot of soldiers during the Civil War. And so nurses had to be able to fight on the front lines of that technology because keep in mind at this time period, there were kind of human experiments through the military, right? When you're a soldier, you sign up, your body belonged to the army. And so the army had every right to try to save your life through different means. And so the medical field, in that perspective, was a pioneering force to showcase how trauma, especially with gunshot wounds and all that, how they were able to treat it was sufficient enough to where by the time we moved to World War One, a lot of those practices kind of drew from what we learned in that time period. So that's one aspect of it. The other part I wanted to talk about that Kel didn't really touch on was at TSU, we do have an art component as well for those who are artists and whatnot who like to look at art. We do feature, I believe, was about a dozen or so artists that cover art pieces that are influenced by certain themes, historical themes of Juneteenth that we cover. For instance, freedom and citizenship, a sense of belongingness. Artists will kind of create their pieces determining on which historical theme that they chose, and so you can also view that as well at TSU.
Awesome, awesome. Like I think I also agree with you. The medical stuff is fascinating, and you start seeing germ theory and Lister and all these sort of things being applied in a way that isn't really the beginnings of some of that, which is
Mhm.
important. So on that note, I don't want to keep this too long because I want the audience to be hyped and like this, all that there is what you need to come to this event to go see. So what I'm going to say is to the audience is, one, in the description below, we're going to have a link and a schedule. So go click on that. So I'm giving you all homework. Go click on the description link, go see the schedule. Go, while I realize no historical movie's perfect, go see Glory or watch it again so you get hyped to go see some of what we're talking about, the beginnings of it, but then join the Buffalo Soldier Museum and this Juneteenth commemoration, celebration, and educational event. Art, speakers, living history, artifacts, all that's going to be there. 19th through the 22nd, I think we said. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to cover some of it for In Range, but really you want to come see it in person. So Cale and Jason, I want to thank you for talking to the audience today and for being part of making this happen. And I want to remind the audience, go click the link and come see us there because you don't want to miss this.